comprenant les défis, les enjeux, puis la réalité des entreprises, nous sommes des spécialistes pour vous soutenir dans la gestion des ressources humaines et la formation de la main-d'œuvre. On vous donne tous les moyens pour que les retombées en ressources humaines soient au rendez-vous.
Notre créneau, c'est la gestion des ressources humaines. Que ce soit le développement de la main-d'œuvre, l'organisation du travail, la formation, le recrutement et la mobilisation des employés.
Nos services peuvent être accompagnés d'une aide financière pour répondre aux besoins de votre entreprise. Les services de soutien et d'intégration en emploi offrent les programmes de subvention salariale qui permettent de rembourser une partie du salaire de l'employé. Nous soutenons la gestion de la diversité culturelle via différents programmes qui s'adressent autant aux employés qu'aux employeurs.
Nos services, personnalisés et sur mesure, sont adaptés à vos défis et à votre réalité d'affaires. Ce qu'on peut s'attendre lorsqu'on contacte Service Québec, de l'écoute, du soutien et de l'accompagnement. Nous allons analyser vos besoins en vous invitant à compléter un outil que nous avons développé, le portrait RH. Ensuite, ensemble, nous allons établir un plan d'intervention. Vous aurez ainsi accès aux subventions et aux ressources pertinentes pour vous aider dans l'atteinte de vos objectifs.
Que ce soit pour générer de la synergie d'équipe, favoriser la collaboration, améliorer la communication ou bonifier la marque employeur, on vous appuie pour que votre entreprise se démarque.
Il est essentiel que les ressources humaines soient au cœur de votre stratégie d'affaires.
Okay, welcome everyone. I hope you're enjoying your day at Campus Party. I'm very excited to be back. This is actually the second time that I give this presentation and it has changed a little bit, but I'm very, very excited to be back here. So my name is Laura Corrales. I'm a senior consultant in sustainability and climate change. And today we're going to be talking about two concepts, intrapreneurship and change agency. But before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge the lands that I'm calling in from. I'm calling in from Montreal, which is traditional territory to the Kanankehaga Nation. They have been the custodians of these lands and these waters for many, many years. And Montreal, this river island, also known as Jokjage, has been a gathering place for many nations for years here in Turtle Island. I want to acknowledge that today this land is home to First Nations as well as to a very, very diverse populations. For me, it's very important to do this acknowledgement because I come from a land that also has more than 100 indigenous populations. I come from Colombia, and it's a territory where First Nations have had great impact due to COVID, but also a long internal conflict that we've had. So I think it's important that each one of us acknowledges the role that we have in reconciliation and understand where we're standing at and what's the history of the places that we're living in and how can we contribute to this bigger and important conversation. So with that in mind, I want to now transition a bit to a small introduction about myself and who is this person that is talking to you today. So as I said, I'm Colombian, born and raised. I've been living here in Montreal for almost 5 years now. A couple of things about myself that I like to say because I feel introductions sometimes are very, very rigorous and structured. I like to share something different. I am an extrovert. I really, really enjoy talking to people. Some people say I'm too passionate, but I consider that actually my superpower. And we're going to talk about that a little bit and how I use that in my work. One of my main values is empathy, and something that I also try to use a lot in my work and has enabled a lot of the things I do. In terms of the work that I have done and some of the organizations that I have been with, as you can see here in the screen, I have a logistics background. I've been with organizations like UPS, DHL, and Delmar, a Canadian logistics service provider located in Montreal, where I had the opportunity to be the first sustainability officer before jumping into consulting, which is what I'm doing now. In terms of academics, I have an engineering background. I am an industrial engineer and have a master's in sustainability from Harvard University. Throughout these 8 years since graduation, I have had the opportunity to work with nonprofit organizations in sustainability and the circular economy, like Ethique and Femme International, where we work on social entrepreneurship with women and also circular economy for fashion industry. In Boston, I had the opportunity to work with Save That Stuff. It's an organization working on waste management and circular economy solutions for hard materials to be recycled. And in terms of grassroots volunteering, I'm always very, very involved in different volunteering efforts. I'm involved with the Youth Congress for Sustainable Americans at the Climate Leadership Corps, organizations that are trying to raise awareness of the climate crisis and open up spaces for youth and citizens to get engaged. I'm also part of the Global Shapers community. It's an initiative of the World Economic Forum to open up a space for young people to be part of global conversations. I had the opportunity to be the curator of the Montreal Hub, as well as the Canadian Community Champion last year. And most recently, I'm with Action Canada. It's a public policy fellowship where we learn about the public policy landscape here in Canada. And it's something that I'm very interested and just starting to learn about what's the intersection of policy, climate change, sustainability, and very interesting this year, our topic is actually immigration. So something that really touches my heart. But that being said, that's a little bit about me. We're going to go into the agenda and what are the activities and what we'll do today in these 20 minutes that we have together. We're going to go through my journey first. And it's not that I like to talk about me, but I really think the lessons that I have learned, it has been through my lived experiences, and I can only talk about what I have lived, and I like to transmit the lessons learned. And so it's really important that we go through what I've been through, my journey, and then from there we're going to take one specific experience and deconstruct it in concepts, in two main concepts, before we actually deconstruct it in tools. So we're going to understand the concept of intrapreneurship and change agency first, and then we're going to take away some tools that I would like to share today if you're interested in starting your own intrapreneurship and change agency activities. And then we'll have the opportunity for Q&A if we have time. So change agency, I know before we jump into the definition, I said we're going to jump into my story. So change agency, and how did I discover that? So I moved to Boston in 2014 from Colombia straight with the idea of just to learn English. That was my main goal. And now my English, as you can see, has gotten a lot better. But at that time, when I moved with that idea, I had a very strong cultural shock when I moved from Colombia to Boston, and mainly the amount of waste that I encounter. And it's not to say that we don't have a waste problem in Colombia. We do have waste challenges, but the nature of our waste in Colombia is mostly organic. We have a lot of fruits, vegetables, and a lot of things are not in packages we have just a different reality, though that is changing. I'm talking about 2014. But here in North America, and when I went specifically to Boston, I was very shocked about the amount of to-go cups, to-go packaging. Everything was a throwaway. I had the opportunity, and during my studies, to work in restaurants, and the amount of food waste really, really, really shocked me. And as I was working, I have this logistics background. Coming from this supply chain perspective, I said, there's something that is broken in our system. How come we're throwing away valuable resources? Like if you think about a plastic cup, it's literally petroleum, right? And how resource intensive that is. If you think about a coffee cup, it's trees that have been cut in the Amazon and then are now in your hand, and we're just throwing them away. And where is away really? So I started to just be really, really curious about that. And a friend told me, well, Laura, you're here in Boston, and there's actually a class in Harvard University called Life Cycle Assessment and Sustainable Supply Chains. And that really resonated with me. I said, sustainable supply chains, that maybe is the place where I could bring together this new curiosity, because I wouldn't call it a passion, it was just a curiosity that I had, and then my supply chain background. When I joined and I took that class, of course, I had the biggest imposter syndrome that day. I said, Harvard, what am I doing here? My English is not that good. But when I got over it and I entered that room and I realized that everyone was in the same place, just trying to understand new concepts, it was through the continuing education and just trying to get into the space, I felt more comfortable. And when I joined this first class, I realized that sustainability is not only about waste. I realized that the issue of waste was part of a bigger concept of the circular economy. I didn't even have idea of what that is. And for those that don't know, feel free to Google it and ask questions maybe offline. If you have the opportunity, feel free to reach out to me. But I realized that there was also this big concept of sustainability. I realized there was actually a master's in sustainability. And I took, actually at that moment, I remember I took a decision and I said, I think there's actually an intersection between the work and my background and this idea of sustainability. And I decided and I made the decision that I wanted to work in this space. And to do that, I knew that coming from the global south, I needed to improve my experience. I needed to improve my CV. I said, you know what? I really want to get hands-on. And that's where I started volunteering with different organizations. I started getting involved with Save That Stuff. As I mentioned in the first slide, I organize events like the Sustainability and Conference for the city of Boston, where we actually made it zero waste for the first time. And we made the news for that. So I was very, very involved. Then after being very involved in Boston, I finally got my paperwork to come to Canada. When I moved to Canada, I said, okay, I was already in the middle of, not the middle, but almost close to the middle of my program. And I said, let me just do the same. I'm here in Montreal. I should just find a volunteering group. I should get engaged. And then now I should be able to get a job in sustainability. So I was very much excited. And I think that's where my superpower was actually not serving me, being too passionate. Right after I got to Montreal, I decided to enroll to 2 classes. For my master's degree, I decided to take a loan with the first job that I got through volunteering. I started volunteering with this organization that was working on social entrepreneurship for women, but mainly solving circular economy challenges in the fashion industry. So we were working with different partners in the city of Montreal to find solutions for textile waste. And I decided to do that. So everything, I guess, was going great. I had a new job. I had 2 classes. Of course, I took this loan and I was learning French at the same time, just trying to integrate myself in this new reality that Montreal was. But having too much in my plate, I had to pay a price. So slowly, I wasn't able to show up to class because I was very busy. And I started to develop some anxiety. I could say I wasn't able to focus at work because I had a lot of school, and I wasn't able to be efficient at school because I had a lot of work, and it felt for me like this might be my only opportunity in the space. I think at that moment, and those of you in the call that are newcomers might relate to this experience, that you're given this chance to have a job in something that you're passionate about. It feels like you cannot let it go and that you have to do it perfect. So a lot of extra pressure that I would put it in myself started to be a weight. So I had at some moment to make a decision and either continue working or withdraw my classes because I was not doing one or the other properly. So I decided to withdraw my classes and continue working because I felt that that's where I could make an impact, and I was really looking after this opportunity, and I could go back to school whenever I want. So after I withdraw classes, and of course I lost the money of the loan that I was now paying for classes that I didn't take, I realized I wasn't able to let that go. And I think you see here, I'm talking about a lot of mental health challenges that I had in that time. I started to have anxiety. I started to not being able to sleep because then I couldn't let go of the fact that I withdraw my classes, and continuously what work got just more intense in my mind, right? I just continued to put more pressure because now I bet everything on work. It has to go right. and it didn't. So quitting classes was not the solution. So I went through a mental health crisis, I would call it, a mix of anxiety, a mix of, yeah, it might be depression at the time, maybe that I felt that I was not doing enough. And I think thankful for the support system that I have on my side. My husband made me realize you got to stop and just take a break. We quit my job together. Actually, he had to go with me to say, no, this is not sustainable. You need to take a break. And I actually did that. Of course, I had already withdrawn my classes. I had to quit my job. I had to stop my French classes. And he got me a ticket to go back home to Colombia. And I was against that. I didn't want to go back home. I went back to Colombia against my will, but to actually for something very beneficial. When I went back to Colombia, and the world stopped for a minute for me. So imagine after, I've been away from home 5 years. I was already married. This grown-up woman, already with having things planned, having to go back to your teenager's room. So there I was in my pink room, having to rethink my life again. And that moment just made me realize and put things in perspective that I was putting so much unnecessary pressure on me. At the end of the day, I lost my job and nothing happened. I withdrew school and nothing happened. These organizations that I was dying for, they were still there, right? And there I was putting at risk my health, and the health of my family. So while I was in Colombia for those 3 months and decided, okay, now I feel I'm in a better place to come back to Canada. When I came back, I called that a second chance, as you can see in the screen. So when I went back to Canada, I realized this time, let me take care of some things first before I go and save the world. So I decided to just find a job, a decent job that could pay for my bills, that could pay for my food. And I leveraged my corporate background, working with big organizations in the logistics industry. I was able to find a job with UPS as a sales representative. And when I was there, I was more established. I realized, well, now I feel more comfortable managing my schedule, and I have more stability, financial stability. The pressure of having that loan, I had already paid for that loan, decided to, okay, maybe it's the time to go back to school. So my company did offer support to go back to school. So I decided to take again one class in my master's for sustainability. And this class, I would say, is a class that changed my life. It was called 21st Century Leadership. And we explored the concept of change agency and how you can create change from within. So in that class, we were asked to do a project of change agency, and I had no idea. But at that moment, I had what we call an aha moment. I realized that I could create change regardless my position. Yes, I didn't have a job in sustainability. I was a sales representative. But when I was given the opportunity to create my own project, I said, maybe within this company, I could create change. And that's where I had my aha moment. And I want to share with you why I am here today. And this is what I call Laura 2.0. So after I realized and reframed the problem, it's not about the job, it's not about my title, but it's about what I do. And I realized that sustainability and impact and change agency is something that I have with me. It's not something that the job has. It's not something that the title has. It's just something that is with me. And I decided to take action in my organization. And as you can see in the screen, the first picture, I was able to create the first employee-led sustainability committee for UPS in Canada. And we actually got a lot of traction to the point that we got a social media post in UPS social media. It's one of the biggest social media in the world. And that was very exciting. I was also invited to be part of the UPS steering committee. So imagine it's a steering committee with all vice president sits on to talk about sustainability, and I was invited to be part because of my grassroots efforts. I was deciding to take action. I was also able to do a consulting project, my first consulting project with the office, the corporate office for sustainability with UPS. And I also decided to take grassroots action. So you can see one of the pictures there when I'm wearing my Colombian sombrero and my mochila, I was actually at the headquarters of the World Economic Forum representing Montreal Global Shapers. So we were 450 young people from around the world, one person from each city, one city only. And there I was representing Montreal. I was able, after 4 years, I was able to finish my master's. And you can see I was a COVID graduate. It was in 2019. And most recently, I was invited to talk at the United Nations Hispanic Leadership Summit, where actually the one question that I was asked was, how can you engage young people in the workplace? And I remember my answer is about giving them the space to have to have impact. Sorry. And I think that's very important because, as you can see and we'll see throughout the presentation, that's at the core of change agency. It doesn't matter your title, you can create impact from whatever you are. And I think that was my big aha moment when I understood that as a sales representative, as a citizen, as a young person, I was able to create the impact that I wanted to have. It was just a decision, and we'll go through some of the tools to do that. And that's why I believe it's really important that I tell you my story, because it's not just about a role, it's about all the background. But I guess you're wondering now, okay, how did that all happen in reality? And here's where we're going to go into two concepts. So I think the concepts that really helped me, one, change agency. And I invite you, there's a lot of research now out there about what a change agency is and how you can put it in practice. But I think one of my favorite quotes is actually my professor from that class that I just told you, Liz Sharp, where she says, change agency is a professional field of expertise. It can be taught, it can be learned, and it can change everything. And I think I just want to put out there a question as well, and just for you to think about it. Imagine what would happen if a lot of us decided to take action in the different organizations, communities that we're at. Imagine the ripple effect that we will create of change. So a change agent is a person that facilitates changes process in an organization and creates and motivates and inspires others to lead ideas and change process for a positive outcome. And then the other concept that I want us to explore very briefly, these are just concepts, there's a lot of research out there, and I'll invite you to take a look into more detail, is intrapreneurship. So for instance, I know in the world of impact and in the world of people that want to make a change, whether in climate, whether in social issues as well, we always see a lot of the success idea of being an entrepreneur. So I, for instance, felt like I had to start something to have change, or I had to have the title internally in an organization to create the change. But then I discovered the concept of intrapreneurship, where you are within an organization, your own entity, and you can start initiatives and lead them and create the change from within. And I love this quote from the person that actually kind of created the name Intrapreneurship. They are dreamers who do. So entrepreneurs are self-appointed general managers of a new idea. And I love that. You have a new idea and you're just the manager of your new idea. You get support and you pretty much work as your own organization, as an entrepreneur, but without an organization. So once I understood those two concepts, once I understood that I had this desire to build change and to be a change agent within my organization, and I understood that entrepreneurship is okay, it's good. Not everyone is born to be an entrepreneur and start their own things, and that doesn't mean that in the future I might not want to do it. But for now, I understood that entrepreneurship is also possible, and I could have a lot of impact from within at work. So those two concepts are very important, and I wanted to share with you all. But now I guess you want to go through the real juice. How did all that happen? How did you go from having an idea and say, yes, I want to get engaged at work, and then create a meaningful impact, and now at this point actually having a career out of that? I think a lot of people are usually very curious about how to transition to sustainability, and that's something I also want to cover here a little bit, that sometimes you don't need to transition, you just need to get started in whatever sector you're at, and then we'll go to that in a little later. So the way that we're going to go through some of the concepts is just through my first entrepreneurship experience. And this is a very small scale project, if I want to be candid with everyone here, but it was very meaningful to me. And this small sustainability committee was something that really gave me the confidence to go out there and then decide to be a very engaged citizen with initiatives like the Global Shapers, Climate Reality, being able to speak at stages like the United Nations. It was through this first step of taking on a first entrepreneurship experience, like establishing a sustainability committee. And then everything starts with an idea. And this could be if you work at a restaurant, starting the composting, if you work at a marketing place, starting some sustainability communications. I just want everyone to understand that we can have these meaningful ideas in different, it doesn't have to be part of our role. And I think that's the most important piece about entrepreneurship. I had a plan. So I had the idea, I had a plan, and my goal was, yes, then we'll have a sustainability committee. So I just have the idea of the sustainability committee. My plan was basically just to ask a couple of permissions, maybe HR, and then voila, we have a committee and we start running initiatives. That was my plan. But entrepreneurship, it's not always like that. And I want to go through the real story and some of the, not in a linear manner. I'm not going to tell the story in a linear manner, but you're going to go through some anecdotes of the experience and some of the tools that I learned through it. And we're going to go through the real story of like what entrepreneurship is. So some of the tools that we're going to uncover, you see them here in the screen. It doesn't mean that they're in any order. For me, it's just something that I call a toolkit. And to be honest, very recently, I started to think about it. I just started a new job 7 months ago, and I'm in an even bigger organization. And I'm starting to rethink myself as an entrepreneur, as a social entrepreneur, and starting to activate and use some of these tools here. So I want you to have them just as a box, a toolbox that you can pick and choose as you're doing your own creative entrepreneurship projects.